You know, people say they pick their noses. I feel like I was born with mine. Welcome to RelationShifts. We are so glad you're here. We thought we would change things up a bit.
You know, that reminds me of the Seinfeld episode.
Oh, yeah, where they were picking their nose.
It's not a pick.
No, it's not a pick. It's
not
cracked.
a pick.
It's cracked.
No, my
I love that.
goodness.
And he pulled up to the car.
Yeah.
It's not a pick.
It's not a pick. Yeah.
I love it. Hey, if you're tuning in, thank you for being here. I'm Larry Little.
And I'm Melissa Jackson.
And you're listening to RelationShifts. And guess what? They heard the new music today. How about that?
I love it. And you guys have to know the secret behind that. That somebody very talented, they're headed to Nashville next, made that song, wrote it, and our very own Larry Little did that.
We had a
incredible.
little help from our AI friends in our studio and our and all the things, but it was fun. I enjoy doing that.
Well, you're very good at it. You're just multi-talented. And you're very good at what we're going to talk about today. So in our conversation today, we're going to be talking about playing, humor, using playfulness in our relationships. And how does that help us connect? Because it's the little shifts that make a big difference in our relationships.
Humor is so important in connecting, I think, when everybody joins in and when it's appropriate. And there are some things you're going to talk about, and we're going to talk about today about how to have humor in your home. And you can do it. How to have humor in your relationships, even if your personality isn't bent toward that. Everybody appreciates different kind of humor. We'll talk about that even a little bit. And maybe, I don't know, Melissa, we're just kind of brainstorming, but even personalities, I think, are driven to different types of humor. So we'll talk a little bit about that in this fun podcast on humor. And another one, just to kick us off. So an invisible man marries an invisible woman. Yeah, their kids were nothing to look at either. I love
That's
it.
a good
I
one.
got her on that one.
That's
that was
actually a good one. So you're saying in personalities that the parents are not the only ones that can have humor. That
That's
different
right.
personalities
That's right.
can enjoy humor. It can be different, but they can also enjoy playfulness. I think that's important for everybody to hear. That
it really is.
Each personality can experience playfulness.
Yeah, and remember, playfulness looks different for different people.
Tell us about that.
Well, the parrot loves to play. They have a natural affinity for humor. They love it. They can, but their humor, and they want to include people, but they're good storytellers because they're verbal. So their humor can be spontaneous. It can be in the moment. They can come up with quick things to say that are kind of funny, and that kind of thing. Camels, on the other hand, they may like more intentional humor, like watching funny movies, watching sitcoms, watching things that make them
I thought you were going to say paint dry. Watching paint dry.
Okay,
I thought
send
you were
all
gonna
emails
say
to
that.
Melissa Jackson.
No, I was going to say stop, brakes, put the brakes on.
No, they may like the humor that's slapstick, or they may like humor that's just right out there that because they think in their minds, okay, this is supposed to be funny, so they get their minds ready and they plan it, and then it's funny. So it's just different from the parrot who's just in the moment, right? And the lions find humor. They can find humor that's very direct, very straight on, very upfront, very kind of aggressive humor, for lack of a better word. That's just, there's no doubt this is supposed to be fun. And they can laugh. They can, as long as they know there's a purpose, they're going to go in with the purpose of, this is going to be funny, and so maybe they're not so great at in the moment spontaneous humor, but boy, they're all over. If this is, for instance, if you're going to a comedian, a comedic show, and lions know that, they're all in. If camels plan for that ahead of time, they focus, we're going in here to laugh. Everybody laugh, that kind of thing. And then, our turtles really get jokes that take a little time to process. They get jokes that kind of come around and hit you from the backside. They get jokes. They love that. They love kind of those jokes that are, or maybe you have to think about for a minute.
Calculated.
And kind of go, oh, yeah, okay, I get it. Yeah, they like that. So, everybody likes to have a humor, but in a different way. They like to play in a different way.
I think it's important to remember that, and it's important for us to understand that so that we can make decisions to be playful, to be playful in our relationship. Here's a stat talking about shared laughter. So when two people are laughing, finding humor in the same thing. So shared laughter between couples in this 2016 study here with the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships, that shared laughter between couples was a strong predictor of relationship quality and, get this, resilience during conflict. So what does this stat mean? I mean, you're laughing during conflict?
Well, not necessarily during the conflict, but because you can laugh together, you can connect. At some point in the conflict, you may say, this is getting ridiculous, and you can laugh together at that. Also, though, I think those, and we'll talk about the neuroscience behind it, I think when you have that kind of connection in a relationship where you have laughed together, it gives you the ability to walk through hard things together.
So here's a funny story with my mother-in-law and my husband. My husband has told me that when he was growing up, and he is a camel, when he was growing up, his mom is a parrot camel, that she would try to be, lecturing, or there was a conflictual situation.
Right.
And he, I'm sure, was a little stoic, little camel, and she could not contain herself, and her face would start moving, and so she would start laughing, and then the situation would be more lighthearted, and then the parenting took place. So, just playfulness, it can change, it can shift things, can it?
It can shift things, and telling those stories teaches our children how to laugh, and I think storytelling is so important, like you just did, and telling stories about our past, telling stories that are humorous. And I'll jump in with you. When I was a child, a young teenager, I guess, maybe 12, 13-ish. I had a friend, and we kind of grew up out in the country. So I spent a lot of time out in the country, and we used to explore, and we loved to explore. He lived on out in rural area, and there was this creek. So we love to go down the creek and go swimming. Just, country guys, that's what we do. And we were on our way to the creek one day, and we saw something moving down by the creek, and young boys, we wanted to know what it was. It looked like it was kind of moving, and it was brown, and I thought, well, is that a baby cow? What is that? No, we got closer. It was a huge skunk. It was a skunk. So we go, we try to pick it up. We try to, of course we couldn't. We didn't catch it, but we got really close, and he got on one side, I got on the other side of the skunk, and we played around with the skunk, and then we went ahead and went swimming, and, just had the best time. And then we were walking home, and we were walking up to their house, and his sister comes out of the house, gets about, maybe 20 feet even from us, and she starts screaming, y'all have been sprayed by a skunk. And she ran back in her house. They made us go to the barn, strip down, run into the house. They ended up burning our clothes because we had been saturated by that.
That is
true story.
Hilarious.
True story.
Oh my goodness. I can see it happen. And you couldn't smell.
No, we couldn't smell it because we were in it. We just, for some reason, we didn't smell it.
So let's talk about what goes on chemically in the brain when there's playfulness, when there's humor.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, what happens with that dopamine, the chemicals, the serotonin that, produces, it does something different.
Yeah, that's, our brain is wired, so to speak, with neurotransmitters. And there's a connectivity so that when one chemical in the brain, the neurotransmitters emit that chemical, it has a chain reaction. So the dopamine has a chain reaction to the serotonin, has a chain reaction to the norepinephrine. So what that means is the dopamine is the chemical that gives us our emotion, that gives us our peace, our anxiety, either one. It gives us that kind of feeling. But the positive part of dopamine is when we connect with humor. It releases that dopamine, which then kicks into the serotonin, which helps us to be calm and enjoy the moment and that kind of thing. So the brain chemistry studies have shown actually changes in times of humor. What does that mean? Why is that important? Because it gives us the ability then to connect. It gives us the ability then not to be so stressed out or so even so passive. It literally connects us to others. So powerful thing. Humor is very important.
It helps us regulate our emotions too. We can kind of pull things in, or we can kind of come out of our shell a little bit. And so, chemically, it is important that we're mindful to play, because we all know that, looking at social media, being on a phone, that produces dopamine, that produces things. And so we need to be mindful. We can replace some of that this summer as we think about how do we use our time, how can we pull in our relationships and do the little shifts to help us. So here's a couple of things. When we look at the impact of playfulness and what it really does, it can shift our minds.
Yep.
So, we can be in a place where maybe we're down, or we're hyper-focused on something, and we just talked about it can be stressful. But humor can really be something that interjects us where we are and really helps us shift our mind into a different place, a different zone.
Yeah, there's no doubt humor is very important and very powerful if it's done correctly. All of us have to be aware. Every personality type has to be aware of using humor appropriately. So let's talk just a minute about some inappropriateness. What would be, because it can be damaging. So what would be some damaging type of humor? Well, when we use sarcasm, when I use that to somebody define that as the ripping of flesh. That's not helpful humor. Other words, people laughing at someone and that person's not a part of that. It can have the opposite effect, right? It can really damage self-esteem. It can hurt relationships. Just a lot of bad stuff. So make sure that you're not pointing that humor towards someone in a negative way. I think that's really important. And also, don't assume that everybody laughs at what you laugh at. I mean, in our house, we had a thing when our kids were growing up. My daughter's this parrot turtle. My son's this turtle lion. So we would sit around the dinner table and we would tell jokes. We love to laugh. We love to just to tell those jokes and experience it. But we looked over there at Mom, and the camel was just kind of going, I don't get it. So we began a ritual of, we would tell a joke and then we would explain it to Mom. And then Mom could find some humor in it and she could laugh. Oh, that's funny. So it's just about pulling everybody in, getting to where, but not excluding someone, but understanding that, the type of humor and the type of humor that I enjoy may not be the type that you enjoy.
That's a great point.
Honoring that.
Because you don't want to use humor when somebody's being vulnerable. That's not the appropriate time.
That's right.
If you feel uncomfortable with their vulnerability and you begin to have humor, that's only going to fuel that disconnect.
That's
so
right.
there are appropriate times, obviously, and there are times that it's appropriate not to use humor.
That's right.
But it connects. When we're doing
does.
it the right way, it connects people. Another piece of how it helps, it just brings some levity to situations. Sometimes we just get so intense or going down a path where we're tasking or we're just trying to make our point, and it can bring levity. It can really create
much needed.
Just a deep breath, just a reframe.
And it helps put it in perspective, doesn't it?
It does.
It just brings perspective, I think, as well to a situation. Sometimes we can get spinning, and there's a little humor placed in the right way can help put it back in perspective.
Yeah. So let's talk about how can you really use humor? What can you do? How can you make this shift? If you are aware that you need some playfulness in your relationships, you need some, just some of that ability to connect this way. So let's talk about how can you shift your mode? How can you shift your mode? If you're aware that this is needed, what are some things that you can do?
Well, it's not going to happen if you don't talk about it. So, I think the first thing in a relationship is to say, hey, we need some humor. Can we both work on just bringing some humor to our relationship? Or in a home, hey, we need some laughter in this home. What can we do? What makes you laugh? So first, it's got to be about finding out what makes that other person in the relationship laugh. So what kind of, is it going to a slapstick comedy? Is it going to a show? Is it telling jokes? Is it playing board games? Is it, is it question asking, silly questions? Find out. But the first thing is to communicate that we need to do that. The second thing is then to develop a plan. Humor does not have to be spontaneous. There's this myth going, in your heads that unless it just happens and spontaneously it can't be funny. No, humor can be planned. So make a plan in your relationship. Here's what we're going to do to bring humor. Here's what we're going to do to lighten things up a little bit. And what does that mean to you? What does that mean to me? And then go do it and realize if it's not funny, if it doesn't work, it's okay. Try again. Just do it again. Believe this or not, to the audience, sometimes my jokes just don't land with Melissa. I don't understand. I don't know. I don't get that.
But you keep trying.
I keep trying.
That's a great point.
I
you
keep
get up
trying.
and go again. You try again.
I'm saving a special one for you at the end of this podcast.
Well, it's time.
Oh,
I think it's time. Let's hear it.
All right. Well, as we wrap up, let's talk just for a minute about what's going on in August.
Yeah, let's do that. So we want you guys to be aware that we have something special going on that we'd love for you to be a part of. And it is about relationships. And it's how to have effective relationships in this digital age. Don't we all need that? We need to be able to be aware of how do we, get past this phone, the computer, what do we do to have effective relationships? So you can go to eaglecenterforleadership.com/events and find out more about this. One of our directors and very own facilitators will be leading this conference. He's going to bring some insight to us, challenge us. We really want you to be a part of this. It is August the 20th from 8 to 9:30 a.m.
Yep, and Melissa's going to be there. I'm going to be there signing a few books, and would love for you to come and get a book as well, right?
Yes.
And hear Marcos. He is amazing. He is so good, and we're excited that he's really leading us in something that is so relevant in relationships in the digital age. It's such an issue.
And he's been studying this and working on this and leading this type of conference. So I'm really excited about the opportunity now that we can open this up to all of our listeners and open it up to our community so they could be a part of it.
Now, as you all love and clamor for, we're going to end today's pod with the dad joke. And it's perfect because we've been talking about humor.
Well, I appreciate you preparing me so I can get in the mode and be ready.
Let's remember that we said, jokes have to be funny, not always, maybe politically correct. So this might not be one that could not be. It could. I don't know. I'm just going to say it. Are you ready?
And that in and of itself is preparation for this.
Robbie's shaking her head again. Okay, our producer. Okay, here we go. All right, ready? What does an angry pepper do? What does an angry pepper do?
What?
It gets jalapeno your face.
Okay.
Did you like? I had the whole thing going there. Everything.
Robin's daughter did some jokes maybe a session ago. Let's bring her back.
I love it. Bring her back. Hey, guys, thank you so much for listening today. We appreciate you having a little fun with us and laughing. We thank you for making that relation shift that'll make a big difference in your relationships.
Little shifts that make a big difference. RelationShifts. Little shifts that make a big difference.